This is Rhythmizer, and if you watch the Futurephonic tutorial on this, you might think it's pretty easy to use. It mostly is, but there are some tricks you should know, because when you get it right, it's kind of like jamming with a live band. You can pick up Rhythmizer for about $27 US. It's made by Futurephonic out of Switzerland, Croatia, and Finland. And it's a pretty cool piece of kit for less than $30. Rhythmizer is basically a way to introduce random elements into your mix, mainly by playing random notes linked to a specific scale of your choosing, but also by randomizing pitch glide, like using your pitch bend wheel if you choose that option. This should definitely appeal to Richard Devine, and anyone wanting to make ambient Eurorack type mixes. There are a lot of other options available in both hardware and software if this sort of plugin interests you, but it's a pretty low cost and flexible option if you primarily use a DAW. If you're like me, the first time I used this, I got pretty much uninspiring garbage right out of the box, and it took a few tries to figure out how to get this to work for specific genres and songs. So I'm going to pass on a couple of tricks that hopefully you will find helpful, and demonstrate how this could be used in a live situation to mimic playing with 2 or 3 other musicians. You know, because other musicians consume food and drink, take up valuable planetary resources, and they're probably not really all that talented anyway.
Take it back! No, I won't take it back! I never will!
For the title track, I've got 4 basic MIDI tracks with 1 live track for jamming, and I can just loop this and bring in or mute a track as I go. There are a couple of other tracks at the bottom that I can either use as a drop or something to pull in at the end of the song by clicking off the loop button. To keep the track in line, I have MIDI loops for the drum and bass with a few minor variations. This gives the song a solid base that we can build around. The drum pattern is from ADSR's Drum Machine, and the bass is from UVI's Eternal Funk library, which has quite a stack of really good bass sounds. Together, those sound like this. It has pretty good drive, and this covers the low end solidly. For the first computer-controlled live track, I've got Rhythmizer here, with 1 long note drawn out. The MIDI from that track is routed to an instrument track in Reaper, here. Basically, I'm sending the MIDI channel to this instrument track, and Rhythmizer is taking care of the rest. The instrument is UVI's Hypnotic Dive with this kind of acid house patch. Without Rhythmizer, it sounds like this. That's okay, but we want to funk it up a bit, and so I've done 2 things. First, I've got Rhythmizer set to the bend category. So instead of hitting raw notes on a scale, it's going to pitch bend from the root note according to some basic parameters. The groove section is what is going to really make the sound here. You'll see this in a minute. 16th notes are the default, but you can add 1/8, 1/4, and 32nd notes in with these probability dials. You can use standard dotted or triple flow here, and add some shuffle here. I've kept this mostly at 16th notes, with a small amount of shuffle to make it sound human, and some random 1/8 notes drawn in. The second thing I've done is to add an envelope on the cutoff frequency and add additional variation. Now our static patch turns into this. It kind of sounds a bit like a guitar player vamping using a wah-wah pedal. 2 other things that are adding variation are the gate and velocity sections. The gate is kind of like the guitar player muting while strumming, and the LFO essentially reduces that amount of gate or mute. A similar LFO is affecting the velocity. All of this together gives it a pretty live feel, which is 100% better than just a static ARP. Plus, Rhythmizer can control this, which lets me play chords or a lead line over the top. The last track for this mix also has Rhythmizer set up, and it controls another instrument, UVI's Energy. Here I'm using the minor pentatonic scale, and no LFOs on the gate and velocity. The groove is pretty much split between 16th and 1/4 notes. That sounds like this. Together we get our title track, and I now have a 5-piece band under my control. For this second track, I've tied a separate instance of Rhythmizer to the bass and 2 different synth tracks. I'll get started with the gated synth track. In solo mode, it sounds like this. The second synth track is this cool ambient sounding sine wave off of UVI's Lo-Fi Dreams library. Like the other track, this is also in minor pentatonic, but is limited to quarter and 16th notes. This kind of gives it a groove feel. Like the first track, I want something solid to build around, so I'm using a glitchy ARP from Hypnotic Dive and a pretty basic drum pattern from ADSR's drum machine. When I tried to set up the bass track for this mix using Rhythmizer, it didn't go as well as I would have hoped. The first problem I ran into is that there is an octave scale that you can use for bass, but not an octave plus fifth or an octave plus fifth and seventh option. This would have been really nice and seems like something that should be included. Since I don't have those options, I again opted for the minor pentatonic scale to make sure that the bass player is kept in check and we don't enter into free jazz territory.
Welcome to Jazz Club, bringing you all that's best in the world of jazz. Nice.
This was still a bit problematic though, because you don't want your bass player hitting non-root notes at specific times if you are trying to perform something like rock, pop, or most electronica. I got around this by inserting a specific fill section into the instrument track at regular intervals, and only allowing Rhythmizer to control the rest. I also have the probability below 50% so that I don't get extended weird note runs for long periods of time. Finally, I've got a very low depth LFO on the gate and velocity to provide a bit of variation and make it sound more human. Put all that together and you get this. So that's a couple of ways that you can use Rhythmizer, and it is proving to be useful to me and seems to be priced right for what it does. There are a few features that I would love to see added to this though. I haven't spent a whole lot of time with this yet, so maybe these things are hidden in here somewhere, and if they are, let me know in the comments. First, it looks like the Rhythmizer for Live version has some different skins. They look pretty cool, and I hope they get ported over to the VST version so that people who use other DAWs can rejoice. Second, I would love to see some controls added to force a root note every so often. Something where you could say hit the root note at a start or end of every measure, or every 8th beat. You can absolutely do this by programming it into your DAW like I had done, but it would be nice if it is integrated into the controls. Third, as I mentioned before, it would also be nice to have an octave plus fifth and an octave plus fifth plus seventh option. This is a pretty important add for left-hand keyboard and to use with any bass instrument.
Take it back. No, I won't take it back. I never will.
Finally, another neat trick would be to add a one-note coloration feature. This could be a dial where you choose one specific note that would be played based on a percentage. For instance, say that you have Rhythmizer plugged into a minor pentatonic scale, but I want to add a 7th note every so often. You wouldn't want the 7th note to have the same percentage as the rest of the scale, but to just hit it once in a while. This feature could also be used to exclude a specific note from a scale. Adding these features seems like it wouldn't be too difficult, and it would make this already worthwhile plugin pretty great. All in all, for under $30, Rhythmizer is pretty useful, and it's a lot of fun to play around with. That's it for today. Hope you are making some great music, by yourself without the need for any other band members.
Take it back. No, I won't. Never will. No, I won't.
Have a good one, and we will see you on the other side of the mountain.